Welcome. Welcome to Ecclesia Forum. Great to see every one of you. We want to be mindful of our time and our guest time. So I want to get started as soon as we can. So we have a couple of guests here this evening. Our county clerk and recorder, Carly Coppice, and her chief deputy, clerk and recorder, Rudy Santos. So I'll just hand it over to them, and they can kind of share their thoughts and insights. There's a few questions that I had sent them earlier that we had kind of processed through a group of us steering committee for the forum, and we had sent that over to them to kind of think about and be able to share on a little bit. And then after we go through some of that, we'll open it up to some questions and answers. And thank you again for you guys for being here, and of course for our guests.
Well, thank you very much. I am Carly Coppice, and I am the clerk and recorder. This is my chief deputy, Rudy Santos. So thank you very much for having us and coming and being engaged on a Sunday evening. Of course, we all know that Election Day is this Tuesday, so I'm hoping all of you have already returned your ballots. Yes, hopefully so, because we want to make sure that the first set of results that we release at 7:10 p.m., which are unofficial, have a good majority of the votes that are going to be cast, because that's really going to indicate to the candidates and obviously the questions and initiatives that are on the ballot kind of where things are at. That first release that you can find is at weldvotes.gov. So we will post that at 7:10 p.m. And like I said, those are unofficial. A lot of people assume that the media will call races. Just because the media calls the race does not mean that I stop counting. I actually have up until 9 days after Election Day to count ballots. So that's a lot of misinformation that's kind of out there. It's like, oh, well, as soon as they call a race, you guys stop counting. We don't. And a lot of misinformation as well around Election Day is that if we stop counting, we stop counting. But the only thing that I like to remind people about Election Day that stops is your ability to cast your ballot. That's it. All of our process and procedures in counting ballots, like I said, can actually go all the way through and up until 9 days after Election Day. So a couple of the questions that we were sent over are, how are votes counted? Well, if you want, I will go through everything, but you can go through and actually go to my Facebook page. I have videos of kind of like the life of the ballot. So you can literally see what happens to your ballot once it comes back into our office. So everything that we do, even in a nonpartisan election like this coordinated election, is all done and managed by a bipartisan team of judges. I kind of kid with them saying, here's your partner of an opposite party, and you are now married until I divorce you after the election, because they have to do everything together. There is no lone zones, so two judges have to do every single step of the process. So as you guys have seen in your ballot information in the instruction sheet, we have 19 secure 24-hour boxes. All of those boxes are underneath video surveillance. We have actually multiple boxes that have multiple cameras on them. I know there's been a lot of misinformation, honestly, around that as well. We do actually have an IT group that goes out and pulls that video on a daily basis and does review it. So yes, we do also actually review the video surveillance on our 24-hour boxes. Last week, did any of you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and see the news and see what happened to the Adams County drop box? Anybody? It's quite entertaining. For me, at least. I found it funny. An dump truck that was working on a construction site accidentally hit one of their 24-hour boxes. And guess what? The ballots didn't go anywhere. The ballot box actually maintained its construction, and it didn't blow up in any way, and the ballots were still secured, even with a dump truck actually hitting and running it over. So we know for sure that our 24-hour boxes are very secure. We actually put them in 5 inches of cement with bolts and all of that kind of stuff. And then also, like I said, they're underneath the 24-hour security surveillance. And then we've actually done testing about fire. So if somebody tries to set our boxes on fire, it doesn't actually work because there's not enough oxygen in there. So when I say they are secure, I really hope you understand that we have made sure that they are secure.
Yeah, I think they're even more secure than the ATMs that they have a lot of the places there. Like Carly said, with all the reinforcement that we have, yeah, it'll be pretty hard to pull one of those out of the ground.
Yeah, more than likely you're going to lose a bumper before you destroy my box. So with those, and then obviously we have 3 voter service and polling centers that are open currently. We have 2 more that are opening tomorrow, so we'll have a total of 5 in-person voting locations for this election. Those are also manned by bipartisan team of judges, so they can also collect your ballot, or you can go in person and cast a ballot there. There's a couple different methods that you can use. We have our ballot marking devices, formerly known as voting machines. Colorado has not had voting machines for quite a few years, honestly. We've always had what are referred to as ballot marking devices. We in Will County have had ballot marking devices since 2006. But the old term has always been voting machines, and that's just kind of what everybody likes to call them. However, those are just recording. The old ones were just recording how you cast it. These new style ones, it actually prints your paper ballot for you. Those are required by federal law to have, so we will always have the ballot marking devices. There's no capable way for any state in the nation to ever get rid of those because it is required underneath the Americans with Disability Act, and is also a part of the HAVA Act, which is the Help America Vote Act, which was done in 2002. So there's a lot of things kind of around those as well, but those are safe and secure as well. We do a lot of testing. There's a ton of seals on them that our election judges have to verify every single time as well. So whatever mechanism that you use, you can make sure and know that every way that you turn in your ballot is safe and secure.
So, Carly, are those voting machines hooked up to the internet in any type, way, shape, or form?
No, they are not. We do have verification. A lot of different states have different type of ballot marking devices. Some of them do have that capability because they're required to actually transmit from their location to the central location. In Colorado, we do not have that type of election model. So those machines here in Colorado, none of them actually have the capability to connect to the internet or have the Wi-Fi capability. Some counties have a little older version, so they have the Wi-Fi capabilities in them. However, if they do come that way, those counties and the state and the federal government actually are required to lock those down. And there's 3 different passwords to those machines that the county has one, the state has one, and the feds have one. There's never the ability for me as a county person to know the state or the federal passcode. The state doesn't know the federal or the county passcode, and federal doesn't know the county and state passcode. So there's not any way for anybody to actually activate any of those. And most of the time, the counties, I believe at this time in Colorado, have all transitioned to the newer and upgraded version that has been federally certified and state certified. So with those machines, those are the ballot marking devices, and like I said, they're only there to assist you in marking your ballot. They don't actually cast your ballot or record your ballot in any way. So with that paper ballot, it gets turned into the ballot box. Our bipartisan team of judges go out to the voter service and polling centers, to the drop boxes, pick everything up. Again, they always are together. They can never be alone. They have the chain of custody logs, so the box or bag that they're using to collect those ballots in are locked and sealed at that location underneath video surveillance, underneath monitorization from the judges that are there at the location, and then that gets brought back into our office where we have the receiving board. The receiving board, again, is a bipartisan team of judges, and their duty is to make sure that the seal that was put on at the location where the ballots were collected is the same one that makes it to the office. So they are verifying, again, with the paper chain of custody, that the seal that was on the bag is the one that is coming in. At that point in time, if everything is okay, they'll go ahead and break that seal and pull those out and get the first initial count of how many ballots we actually have received from that location for that day. Now, of course, it's closer to election day, so our rovers are going out multiple times a day trying to get in as many ballots as possible. So then again, like I said, at that 7:10 p.m. release, we have a good representation of where Weld County stands on everything that's on the ballot, including the state HH and II. And so with that, once they get the first initial count, we do have a machine that's called the Agilis machine. That is where we will run the ballots through. It takes a picture of the front and back of the envelope. It date stamps it. The date stamp is extremely important because Colorado is an in-hand state. So what that means is I have to have your ballot in my hand by 7 p.m. We are not like other states that have postmarks, so you can't just postmark your ballot and get it to us after Election Day. We have to physically have it at either one of our secure 24-hour boxes, voter service and polling centers, by 7 p.m. on Election Day for it to be eligible to be counted. That's why I hope nobody decides to put their ballot in the mail at this point, because there is no way USPS is going to be getting your ballot to us by 7 p.m. on Election Day. That's why hopefully last week you guys have kind of saw a media push that last Monday was the last day that we recommend you put your ballot in the mail to make sure that it gets to us. A lot of people don't know this, but all of Weld County's mail, no matter where you're in Weld County, goes down to Denver first and then gets sorted and brought back up. So that's why we always say a week out prior to Election Day, do not put it in the mail. Make sure and either drop it off at an in-person site or one of our secure 24-hour boxes. Okay. You can just grab it from me if you want.
Got the mic now. All right. Just one other thing I wanted to add, just in case somebody does actually put it in the mail stream, there is one last hope. We go down to the general mailing facility down in Quebec, in Commerce City, and we actually, at 7 p.m., we actually get the ballots there, just in case. And every time we go down there, it depends on what type of election it is, but sometimes we get 3 ballots, sometimes we get 300 ballots. So we want to make sure that everybody who had a chance to cast their ballot before 7 p.m. on Election Day has an opportunity to vote. Thanks for getting that at work, too.
Yeah, so we actually have a really good working relationship with USPS. They actually, at the Denver General Mail facility, there's another one in Grand Junction, they literally shut down their operation and they do what is called a sweep on election night. So at 7 p.m. they will shut down their operation and they will do a sweep through every single piece of mail that they currently have. And if they see a ballot, they will pull it so that they can have it for us. So that, again, like I said, we can get it the next day and continue and have it be counted. So we're very thankful for our relationship with USPS in that manner. Once we get it through the Agilis machine and it takes the picture of the signature, we do what is automatic signature verification. So the last signature that we have on your voter registration record is what we are comparing that signature to. There are essentially 100 points in your signature, and we require at least 55 or more of those points be met for us to accept it as a valid signature. If for whatever reason the Agilis machine with that automatic signature verification is not within that time or those points, it does get sent over to a human election judge that then will do the review. They have a lot more signatures on your voter registration record to actually compare it to. And so what they'll do is they'll go and they'll review like the last 3 or 4 signatures that they have, again, trying to see if they have enough points within your signature for them to match. With that, we do a lot of training. Our election judges are volunteers, so we're not 100% sure their background, right? I don't know if they have any handwriting expertise or not. So what we do is we give them training, but we actually bring in the handwriting expert. She used to actually work for Greeley GPD. She was their handwriting expert. She used to work for the courts, and she also assisted the district attorney for Weld County as well. She's now since retired, but she's continued to come and train our election judges. So she comes in and, I mean, if you have ever wanted to find something completely unique, look into handwriting expertise and analysis, because there is just so many things within that that are looked at. And it actually never is if my name is Carly that I'm spelling out Carly. They're not actually, that's not what they're looking at. They're looking at the spacing. Do I lift my pen up? Do I have a slant forward? Do I have a slant back? How big is my R spacing? What do I do with my Y? And so a whole bunch of different things within your signature that they are looking for that are unique to you. Obviously, if you're like me, my signature over the years has changed a little bit, but there are still tiny little nuances within your signature that stay consistent. And so those are the different points that they're looking at to make sure that we are successful in accepting a ballot that has been correctly cast. With the signature verification, they are the biggest defenders against any attempts of fraud. We have always had people attempting to cast somebody else's ballot. However, we've always been very successful with our process and procedures with the Agilis and the signature verification judges, that we have been able to recognize and then obviously turn that over to the district attorney's office. We have a very good working relationship with them, and they do a full-born investigation into that. And it is up to his discretion if he does want to actually take somebody and charge them or not. I'm very confident in the process that he does in determining if he is going to prosecute somebody. The last time we actually took somebody to court was in 2016. A gentleman tried to cast his ex-wife's ballot, and he tried all this sorts of things to get out of it. We did take him to court, and he was found guilty. He still currently is under probation because he tried to in 2020 to appeal it, and the appeal judge was like, yeah, nope, sorry. You did this. You're still found guilty. So we do take it very seriously within the whole entire state of Colorado. But like I said, I'm really fortunate that we've always had really good district attorneys here in Will County that have always made it a big priority. And they actually allow between 2 and 3 of their investigators, even with all the other workload they have, to dedicate time into investigating what we actually turn over to them after Election Day.
And then our voter registration system, we've had 2 versions since I believe 2000, and we have every single signature that you've had that came across our counter, whether it was from a voter registration form or your mail-in envelope. So we have historical records of each one. And I can say with great pride that my signature has been getting sloppier over the years because I'm always in a hurry. A few years ago, Carly had our signatures analyzed, and that's what the lady told me, and I was like, you know what, that's spot on right there. Yeah, always in a hurry.
That's right. And we're trying to have a nicer signature, but I think it's maybe a lost cause. We'll see what he does in a couple of years. But so they do have that type of training. So I feel very confident in our judges. Like I said, we've actually been very successful. Like I said, we have taken things to court, and we've been successful in court as well. We've never not had a guilty verdict when we have taken somebody to court because of the process and procedures and the training that we do is acceptable and actually usually gets commended from the court, saying you guys actually do a really good job to make sure that the safeguard in place for any types of attempt of fraud is very high level. So I'm very proud of our election judges and the training that we do in my office in support of any potential cases that we do have. I definitely don't like going into court. It's not the funnest if you guys have ever had to go to court and sit on the witness stand. I tend to talk too fast, so the judge usually has to tell me to slow down. That poor court recorders, bless them, because I'm a fast talker, and I just don't know how they do it. That is one thing that amazes me so to this day. If you've ever seen court reporters do their thing, it is really actually cool, but I do feel sorry for when they get a fast talker like me on the stand. So after we go through the signature verification, if you get it accepted, you will probably get a notification from BallotTrax. That is something that Will County brought to the state of Colorado. So you got a notification when the ballot was sent out to you. And then as soon as we accept it for counting, you should get another notification. There are multiple different ways you can get that notification through email, text message, or a phone call, kind of however you have decided to get that notification from you. Then that goes over to the opening board. Again, the opening board, all of my boards are bipartisan, like I've said. The opening board's biggest responsibility is to make sure that your constitutional right of a private ballot is met. So as soon as your ballot gets sent over to the opening board, it is their responsibility to make sure when they are separating and pulling your ballot out of that return envelope, that nobody at that point can then determine that that was your ballot. We have no way of tying it back to you at that point. That is a constitutional requirement. I know a lot of people over the last few years are like, but I want to see my ballot. I cannot show you your ballot. I don't even know where my ballot is, and I'm the clerk. If I can't find my own ballot, I don't know how you expect me to find your ballot. And that is because in the Colorado Constitution and at the federal level, it is a requirement that you are to have a private ballot. Now, if you decide to take a picture of your ballot and share it on social media, that's your own business. I can't obviously do anything against that for you. But once it becomes in my custody, your ballot at that point and what you voted for and how you voted is considered to be a constitutionally private ballot at that point. So the opening board, then what they do is they separate it. And I don't know if you guys have seen your or remember what your return envelopes look like, but the return envelope on one side has no voter information on it. On the other side, it has all your voter information on it. That was designed for this purpose, because when they have gone through and they re-verify how many ballots that signature board has told them that they are going to receive. That portion is what is turned up. So that back side that has no voter information, that's what you should see. If you ever come and take a tour from my office, or if you come in and just want to observe for a little while, you will see at that point in time, all you'll see is like ballot tracks advertisement. That's all you should see when they're separating it out. So again, they don't even know if they're taking their own ballot out of that envelope at that time. Once they do that part, they will verify that all envelopes are empty. This is a team of 4, so 2 R's and 2 D's. So once that, let's say I have that group of envelopes, I'm going to give it over to Rudy, and he's actually going to verify that I have emptied all of my envelopes out, and I'm going to get his so I can verify he has emptied all of his envelopes out. So there's never any possibility that there's going to be somebody who is trying to, in any type of malice way, not put and pull out a ballot. Then once they have those envelopes cleared, they'll set those into a different tracking so we know where they're at. Those ballots are then opened and kind of flattened. We like to make sure that we look for toddler drawings because we get a lot of toddler drawings on our ballots. We refer to them as love notes. There's some people that like to send us notes on their ballot as well. We'll say that they're love notes. They're not always love notes, but we refer to them as love notes. People also like to apparently fill out their ballots when they're near coffee. We get a lot of coffee stains. There are some substances that I will never want to know what it is, ever. Don't ever want to know what kind of substance sometimes gets on those ballots. So the opening board is making sure that those ballots are still in an acceptable condition before it gets over to the counting machines. And so they're looking at different things. Also, sometimes we get tears. Dogs usually like to get ballots. We've actually had a lizard get a ballot before. Cats usually like ballots too. Birds, we've had a couple parrots get some ballots. And so those obviously are not probably going to be successful going into the counting machine. And so they will put those ballots on top so that the next board knows, hey, don't send this through the machine. Go ahead and do the duplicate process on those. Once they get them flattened out, they kind of look over the ballot just to make sure that the condition of it is acceptable. They'll batch that back up into 100. They'll recount, and then they'll box it back up into the boxes to then be sent over to central count. The central count is where we do all the counting of the ballots, so they're obviously responsible making sure that all ballots are counted successfully. We also have the duplication process because there's some that come in with some of those other items that are not appropriate on the ballots. Those get sent over to the duplication process. The duplication process is, again, a bipartisan team of judges, and their responsibility is to make sure that the original ballot cast by that voter is duplicated onto a clean ballot that can actually be run through the voting equipment. So what we have is we have actually 4 judges. So we have one person reading the original ballot and one person watching them read the original ballot. We have another judge using a ballot marking device mark a new ballot and one person watching them mark that new ballot. As soon as that process is done, they'll kind of switch to do another audit in the process. What we do is we mark the original with an original 1 or whatever sequence number we're on, 1 to 1,000, whatever we are, and then the original and duplicate ballot get marked with the same. So we can always tie them back. And that's actually because of the audit that we do after the election. In case one of those duplicate ballots does get selected for the audit, we have to pull the original ballot for the auditors so that they are able to verify that the duplication process was done to the appropriate level. And again, that nothing nefarious happened at that point. So once we get those duplicated, we will run those ballots through our batch scanning machines. They also take an image of the front and the back, and then they will decide where what I refer to that marble goes. So which bucket that marble goes into. Now, if that voting equipment can't with 100% certainty determine where to place that marble, it goes over to what we refer to as the adjudication process. The adjudication process is, again, bipartisan team of judges, and their responsibility is to determine that voter intent. So we train them on a whole different things on voter intent as far as the pattern of how that person has marked the ballot. Have they indicated per the instructions that, nope, I didn't want this, I actually wanted that. Trying to figure out what they were intending to cast. So what those judges are going to do is they are going to tell the machine where to put that marble. So let's say it's a yes, no. But I say, originally I voted yes. After thinking about it, I scratched yes out. I filled in the no. Obviously, both ovals are filled out. We don't know where that marble goes. Obviously, the machine's like, they voted for both. I can't count it. So it goes over to the adjudication team. We will then say, okay, they didn't want the yes, so don't put the marble in the yes, put the marble in the no bucket. Once they've done that, it goes over to another audit team. So we're 100% auditing that process as well. So a second bipartisan team of judges is then reviewing all the adjudication that is done as well before it gets sent over to our tabulation server. The tabulation server does not actually tally anything until after 7 p.m. on election day. So I get some people that always are calling me saying, hey, this person told me they know what's winning and how everything is going. Is that true? If somebody ever tells you they know if somebody is winning a race or if they know if something is failing or passing, I'm just going to tell you right now, they're lying to you, because there is no possible way that anybody actually knows how the votes are being tallied, because we don't tally until after 7 p.m. on election day.
You mean we don't have baseball scores available up on our website? The top of the 7th inning, so-and-so's ahead, or this question's ahead, Carly?
No, we do not. We don't have any type of baseball scores. I love baseball, but no, we don't play baseball in the office. So that is one thing. There are a lot of people, especially going into next year, they like to try and say, well, this candidate's ahead and this candidate's polling ahead. Polls are polls. And to be honest, a lot of people don't tell the truth when being approached by somebody who is polling them for a particular race or a question or issue that is on the ballot. That's been studied a lot over the multiple decades we have been voting. Polls are very untrustworthy. I would always recommend voters not put a lot of faith into polls because, again, there could be just a certain target of people that the pollsters are aiming for. And then they're also, more than likely, voters are going to try and guess where that pollster may be leaning, and then just to be safe, say whatever the pollster is wanting them to say. So I always recommend take those polls with a grain of salt. Sometimes pollsters, again, have a result that they want, so they are going to ask certain people to get the result that they want to indicate if something on the ballot is winning or not winning, or if a candidate is winning or not winning. Just throwing that out there for caution, especially going into a presidential year. There's already a lot of rumble around, obviously, the presidential candidates and who's polling ahead of who. I always recommend, please just take those with a grain of salt. You just never know the accuracy or the intent of the people taking those polls. So at 7:10 p.m., we'll release those unofficial set of results. For us here in Will County, we will stay late tomorrow night, so Monday, the Monday before, and get everything processed that we have all the way through Monday. So then at 7:10 p.m., everything that we have been able to start counting 15 days ahead of Election Day is what you will see at that 7:10 p.m. Results. At this point in time, we have a little over 29,000 ballots back for this election. We sent out a little over 212,000 ballots. I'm thinking probably for this coordinated election, we'll be lucky if we get into the 35% area. We usually are in the 30% area for coordinated elections. I always would love to get that number higher. Coordinated elections, in my opinion, are extremely important due to the fact that these are your school boards, these are your town and city councils. These have more immediate, direct impact on your day-to-day life than the presidential election. These are the ones that really, again, have immediate impact to your day-to-day life. And so I would hope and I wish that we could have more than the 30 percentile turnout, but unfortunately it kind of looks as if we're going to probably stay in that manner. Right now, we're probably going to need between 43 and 44,000 ballots back between Monday and Tuesday to get to 35%. I'm really hoping I get slammed on election day. I know that means I'll have to shut down at midnight and come back and start counting again on Wednesday. However, I really hope people turn out for this election because, like I said, these are really important races that we have on this ballot.
Yeah, we like to guess voter turnout. We have like a sheet of paper as far as what we think the percentages will be. So for me to get to my percentage, we'll need 20,000 ballots back tomorrow, and then 30,000 back on Tuesday. But we'll see.
Yeah, Rudy and I are kind of we go back and forth as far as who has the projection rate. Over the last 19 years, it's been fun trying to figure out how voters are going to turn out. And it really, honestly, how an election is when we can project potential turnout is what's on the ballot. That's always going to be the driving force. What is on the ballot is going to determine if that person's going to participate or not. I wish everybody would participate every single election, but the reality is that it kind of just depends on if what's on the ballot motivates them or not. So that's how we can kind of know where we're at every single election. We've got a lot of data that we can look at for historical reasons and comparisons. So again, that's also one of the things that the media also is able to do as well. So they can see after our 7:10 p.m. release where things are kind of at, where historically turnout is for this type of an election. And that's kind of how they use to estimate if they should call a race or not. Again, just because it's been called by the media does not mean that it is over. A lot of the coordinated election results are very, very close, and they typically won't call a race. However, if it is more than 10% separation and we're at election day and they're calling me up and saying, hey, Carly, how many ballots do you still have to process? And I'm saying, I've got about 20,000 ballots left for Olive County. They're more than likely safe to go ahead and call a race. But again, I actually have, like I said, and I'll repeat this a lot because it's really important for people to understand, up until 9 days after Election Day to continue counting. So what are we counting after Election Day, Rudy?
The type of ballots that we're counting after Election Day are cures, people who failed to sign their mail-in envelope, or signature discrepancies. We do send them a letter, or we send them electronic communication as far as giving them to a chance to rectify that signature discrepancy. Also, military and overseas voters, as long as their ballots were postmarked by Election Day at 7 p.m., they do have an opportunity to cast their ballot 2 Thursdays after Election Day for those to come in. So that's what we're counting. And also ballots that have been delivered to other counties before 7 p.m. on Election Day. So if you're in Montezuma County on business, if you return that ballot to the clerk and recorder there before 7 p.m. on Election Day, they will get us the ballot, and that person who casts the ballot there, they'll go ahead and send that over FedEx, and we'll go ahead and process that ballot as well.
Yeah, there is a law on the books that any clerk and recorder can accept any other county's ballots by 7 p.m. We get a lot of Larimer County and Boulder County and Adams County. Obviously, they're neighboring counties to us. But we also, depending on if they're up during, well, it's plains deer hunting and antelope hunting right now season. But it's also bird hunting season right now. And so if they're coming over into the eastern plains to do that type of hunting as well, they'll also be coming. And more than likely, they could, I hope they have their ballot. They didn't leave it at home. But if they do, then they can go ahead and drop it into one of our boxes. We will do the official date stamp for it. And then, like as Rudy said, get that to that other county so they can go ahead and process it and get it counted. It kind of depends on how many people are participating. Our Election Day return after that time frame from other counties can depend. It could be anywhere between 300 up to about 1,500. I think it's been the most that we have seen other counties have received outside of Will County. But we have been able to successfully count those ballots and get those into the actual official results. Do you want to go into the risk limiting audit?
Risk limiting audit. It's a test that we perform after the election. What we do is we'll send the list, the cast vote record that's generated out of our tabulation system. And like Carly was stating earlier, as far as our central count ballots go, they are counted in a certain order. And we have to keep those in batches of 100 and also boxes, which have 600 ballots. And then the Secretary of State will determine which ballots that we have to audit after the election via the risk limiting audit. There is a die that they go ahead and throw. It's performed 2 days, 2 to 3 days after the election. and it'll determine the closeness of a couple races, a statewide race and a local race will determine how many ballots that we'll have to actually pull to perform that risk limiting audit. And it's very important that our election judges keep those ballots in order, because they'll tell us to go to box 1, let's see, the 5th batch there, and we need to pull the 63rd ballot, and it has to match up via the cast vote record. And I'm happy to report that since we've been doing this, we haven't had any discrepancies as far as the audited races and the unaudited races as well.
Yeah, so when we are getting that audit selection done by the Secretary of State, at this point in time, I don't know what races are going to be audited. So I can't try and focus my judges on like, okay, you have to make sure that this race is counted correctly, because I don't know. So with that random selection of the ballots that are going to be selected to pull for our third-party outside auditing team to come in to do, that also is going to be determining what statewide and county race or local race, like Rudy said, is going to be audited as well. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can look at when looking at the risk limiting audit. You can go to the Secretary of State's audit page, so it has all that information on there. The audit itself is actually what is referred to as open source. So if you like computer programming and you may be bored on a Friday night, you're more than welcome to go through every single line of that coding if you would like. I would recommend to have a lot of water, because it is a lot of lines of code, but that is something that you could possibly do if you'd like to look further into the risk limiting audit. But that's how we and Will County can 100% confidently say that our voting equipment is counting your ballot exactly how you have cast it with 100% certainty due to this risk limiting audit. Because of the scientific method used behind it, it is able to do a percentage. Usually we have between 100 and 400 ballots that get selected for the audit. And like I said, even on those audited races and unaudited races, we've never had any discrepancy whatsoever. So how our audit board is looking at the original ballot that is pulled and given to them and what they are entering into the audit system, when they are complete with all those ballots, that is what is compared to the risk limiting audit, or the cast vote record. And that is the cast vote record, is exactly how that machine put those marbles in those buckets. That is compared. So again, we have the human audit team that is not election judges. They are selected by the parties to come in and do the audit and perform the audit for us. So it is a third-party outside group coming in. It isn't myself auditing myself. That would make no sense if I audited myself. So we do have outside people come in and perform that audit. Obviously, we're there to assist them because we have to have the chain of custody, and we're responsible for the security of those ballots for 25 months after the election. So we're there to actually assist them, pull those ballots for them. They enter it into the audit system. Once they are complete, the audit is run, and it will then tell us if there was any type of discrepancy whatsoever. Like Rudy said, we have never had a discrepancy here in Will County. So we know that our voting equipment is counting it with 100% accuracy. And we have been doing the risk limiting audit since 2014. Prior to that, we had another type of audit that was done. And even with that audit, we have never had a discrepancy here in Will County. So we can say that we know that historically and even present day, that your ballot is being cast exactly how you have marked it. And that we're proud of the work that we do. And that's part of the safety measures and integrity process that we have within our whole entire thing. So as soon as I get that number of how many ballots have come in, every single day we do a daily audit and reconciliation process. So I know exactly how many ballots have come in that day. I then are able to know exactly how many ballots are in every single stage of the process. I know how many ballots are currently being signature verified. I know how many ballots are currently being opened. I know how many ballots that are currently in the process of being counted and how many ballots have been completed. So every single day, my team, again, does an audit and reconciliation process to make sure that we have it down to zero discrepancies within that. If there is ever any type of discrepancies, we would know exactly in the process where it is, and we're able to then go and rectify if it ever happens. Most of the time, it's out at our voter service and polling centers. We've got a lot of juniors and seniors in Will County for some reason. And so sometimes when the judge goes in, they'll accidentally mark junior when it should have been senior. But because of our auditing and our daily reconciliation, we know that that is what has happened. So then we can go back in and have our judges then correct that type of an issue. So we're then able to make sure that every single day we've got 0 discrepancies. And we won't stop the process and try to figure out what happened until we actually come to 0. We won't start the next day unless we have rectified and made sure with 100% certainty we're going into that day with 0 discrepancies. So that is part of our process in making sure that the election stays transparent and secure. We have, like I said, a whole bunch of what we call accounting mechanisms as well. That chain of custody goes with those ballots from the very time they go out to pick up to the very time that that box has been counted and is waiting to be stored. We've got video surveillance underneath anything. I kind of tease my judges, be mindful of what you do, because there is no area in this process where you can go and hide and potentially pick your nose. So if you do pick your nose, it is on record for 25 months. And we do have people request to review that video surveillance. That would probably give them something to look at, because otherwise the video can be a little bit dull. But we do have every single area that your ballot could be is in an area that is underneath video surveillance. And like I said, there's no blackout area. There's no space in those rooms where you can go and get away from the camera at all. So again, I do kind of gently remind our election judges, please be mindful of what you're scratching or picking at any moment in time, because it will be, like I said, stored on record for 25 months. And candidates and issue committees or even the media can request for that video. And unless you want to have yourself on the news media picking your nose, I would recommend to be very careful. So, well, let me actually stop right there before I go into the last couple of questions, because they're not directly a part of the election process. Do you guys have any questions first at all? That was a lot of stuff to take, so I understand if you're like, that was a fire hose, Carly. No.
There's a couple questions that I had written down and popped up that I think would be one that might be worth asking. Can other people turn in other people's ballots?
Yes. So in the state of Colorado, you can collect up to 10 ballots from other people to then turn in. If you do collect more than 10, we do have to log you. So you have to actually fill out a log if you turn in more than 10. That could potentially then be a part of any investigation that the DA does after the election. So it is legal in Colorado to collect at least 10 ballots without then having to be logged. We do keep that log. You do have to fill out your name and you have to show your ID. So you have to fill out your name, contact information, and how many ballots you have actually returned if you decide to do more than 10. But I always say just do the 10, because you don't want to have to be a part of any type of investigation afterwards, potentially.
That's great. Thank you. And then another one, you mentioned about tears and spills on ballots. Can I request a new ballot before sending it in?
Yes, you can. So that's how we kind of know that dogs or birds or cats or toddlers have got a hold of your ballot, because that's usually the number one call that we get. My dog got my ballot. Currently, right now, I will say cats are winning this election. There have been more cats that have destroyed ballots this time than any other method. They're beating the toddlers and the lizards and the birds and the dogs this time. We'll see. There's still, a little bit of time left in the election. But you can call and request a ballot if it is before the 7 days out from election. If you need a new ballot as of today or tomorrow or Tuesday, we'll recommend you go to one of the in-person sites to get a replacement ballot, or you can just choose to vote on one of the ballot marking devices, or you can come into our office. So it kind of depends on where it is in the election, if we can have enough time to mail you one and then allow you enough time to get it back to us, or we recommend you go in person and to get that rectified.
And I did notice that there's a lot of teams, volunteers from both the major parties. How does a person volunteer for that, and how many volunteers do you have?
To volunteer to be an election judge, if you belong to a major party, make sure you go to your caucus, which will probably be the first part of March. We haven't heard what dates are official, for those caucuses for the Democratic or Republican Party, but that's the first list that we have to pull from legally. And then after that, then we work with the parties if they don't give us enough judges. Historically, here in Will County, we've been very fortunate. Both parties have provided us enough judges to actually conduct our elections so that we can have bipartisan judges. We don't have to use too many unaffiliated voters to actually fill those ranks. So yeah, if it's something that you're interested in, we do pay. It's a paid volunteership here. So let's see, $15 an hour. If you're a regular judge, $17.50 if you're a supervisor. So if you have some time, it's a little bit of mad money, especially for right before the holidays. Also, you're performing your patriotic duty for your country too, and we can always use some help as far as conducting these elections.
Yeah, that's great. And then another question that I had thought of, you had mentioned several times that this is an off year, non-presidential election. What's the difference between this year and next year, other than just numbers you had mentioned? But what any other difference?
Again, it can kind of depend. It's more so what's on the ballot. So obviously next year, the presidential election is going to dominate the news. It kind of somewhat is a little bit because we have the March presidential primary coming up here in Colorado, and some other states are having their primary elections as well for the presidential race. That's a big driver for a lot of people. I think as we kind of have grown up in society, the president is known right away. Like you kind of understand who the president is, even in the younger elementary school ages. And so I think just because of that, we have people that literally just vote every 4 years because it's a presidential election. That's one of the biggest things that is the difference. It's, again, a lot of voter education is pushed during those years as well. A lot of get out the vote is what it is called, is done during presidential years. You're not seeing a whole bunch of get out the vote for this election. You have, your school board candidates in your town and city candidates trying to do the get out the vote, but it's just not as well known. And that's why I say I really try and encourage people to truly understand what has a more direct impact to yourself, and so that you can try and get more participation for these elections. But during a presidential year, there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of emotions around presidential years as well. And I think a lot of people find it more in their civic duty to participate in those elections.
Last question that I had, unless we have more out there, you had mentioned about the last case going to court in 2016 for attempted fraud. What is the percentage of attempted fraud here in Weld County? And yeah, how prevalent is that?
So here in Will County, it is actually not that prevalent. And again, the percentage obviously varies by the election, because obviously it depends on how much participation you're going to get. In a presidential year, there's going to be more that we refer over to investigation than obviously this year. This year is going to be, these are the voters that vote every single election. And so they know how to properly cast their ballot. They do have a consistent signature, where the voters during a presidential year, again, like I said, they may have only voted the last presidential, and they've not voted the last 5 elections between the next presidential election. So it kind of depends on every single election. This election, like I said, we've not actually rejected too many signatures this time around. We're underneath 500 at this point that have been rejected. Like I said, we're just under 30,000. And then next year, so in 2020, we referred over 1,400 signatures for investigation because one, they just didn't pay attention to my letter. That's the most of the reason why. Apparently, getting a letter from the district attorney is a lot more scary than getting a letter from the clerk and recorder, apparently. I guess I am not as intimidating as a district attorney.
I'm scared to get my title complete cards when I get a new vehicle from you.
Yeah, because I know title complete cards, you're going to be writing a big old check. But yes, we get a lot more response from title complete cards even than we do from the cure letters for voters. But then again, once, when we turned over in 2020, just to give a little bit more statistics, we turned over 1,400 signatures because they didn't respond back to our letter. Those then went into investigation. 78% of that 1,400 responded to the district attorney saying, yes, I did cast my ballot. Sorry, I didn't reply to the clerk. So again, they have a higher percentage of turnout. My DA, Michael Rourke, teases me again. He's just like, see, people are way more afraid of you or afraid of me than you, which I understand, but I really wish people would understand the importance, because I'm the one that's going to turn it over to the DA if you don't respond to me. But they usually have a higher percentage of response back with people saying, yes, I did actually do that. I just ignored the clerk and recorder's letter. So that left just a little over, 27% that actually had to be investigated. And so that part of their investigation, most of the time, it's usually a parent signing for a kid who's off to college. And that parent usually will come in and admit it and say, I did not, I am sorry, this is me, don't go after my kid. It is my fault. And I know, and again, I respect our district attorney's ability to determine if they're actually going to take somebody and prosecute them. Like I said, in 2016, he did decide to go ahead and prosecute that person, and we went to court. And like I said, we were successful. The last times over the last 19 years that have been in elections that we have taken somebody to court, again, we have been successful. There's never not been a guilty verdict. But there was also this last election, an 85-year-old widow had signed her deceased husband's ballot. He did vote his ballot, but he didn't sign his envelope before he passed away. And the DA came to me and he's like, I really don't feel like taking an 85-year-old woman and prosecuting her for this. That ballot was not counted. And that's what we have to remember in this conversation with the district attorney's office. That was successfully caught. I have the most of confidence in our district attorney to make that determination if he's actually going to charge somebody for it. Again, at the end of the day, it was caught. The ballot was not cast. And again, I fully support him not taking that 85-year-old widow to court and prosecuting her. I just don't think that that is appropriate. And so that's my opinion. You may feel differently, and that's perfectly fine. But we do have a good working relationship. And so it kind of depends on the election, the percentage. This one, quite low. Presidential's quite high.
That's great. Thank you. We have a question here, and I think we have a cordless microphone for you.
Hi, my name's Tim. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks for explaining the processes for counting votes. I've never heard that in such detail before. My wife and I just moved here within the month from the Denver area, but I neglected to change my address. So is that what's the process at this point? I don't think I can go online. I saw today there's an 8-day window that you have to get that done. Anything I can do at this point?
Yes. So you could still go online and do that. However, I would recommend going into one of our voter service and polling centers. So tomorrow, like I said, if you're in the Greeley-Evans area, we'll have UNC open. We have Trinity Lutheran on 35th and Highway 34 open. We'll also have Ames Community College on the west side of Greeley as well. Those are the 3 locations within this area. Tomorrow, they're open from 8 to 5, and then on Election Day, they're open from 7 to 7. So you can come in. We're able to pull your record up from your prior county, update it, and get it all processed to the current address that you have, and then give you the ballot that you could be voting on. So we have in Colorado, we are same-day registration, so that's how we're able to do that. We don't have a cutoff date of when you have to have things done. You can come in all the way up until 7 p.m. to do those address changes, or even register to vote if you are not registered to vote. The only thing that is the deadline is 22 days. You've had to have been a resident of Colorado with any part of the state of Colorado for 22 days. That's the only requirement.
And we don't anticipate long lines as far as tomorrow or Tuesday. But if you have time tomorrow, make sure you get that done.
Alrighty. So I know a couple of the other things that was presented to us. There was some Pew research, and I am familiar with this research that says, less than 20% of the public trust the government. Don't blame them. I may be part of that 20%, and I work for the government. No. I trust my part of the process. I trust my piece of the government that I'm in charge of. But I think for elections, as far as I can speak to, obviously that in elections, I know here in the state of Colorado, all of my fellow county clerks, so there are 64 of us, I know them all personally, and I know that they have the same standard of an election and the operation of a standard of election that we have here in Bell County. I obviously get a lot of questions about, oh, well, what about that county? Do they do that? And I can say, yes, they do. They may do it a little differently than us because obviously I am considered a big county, and Jackson County up in the mountains, that's a total of 1,500 people in the county. Does her processes look like they need to with me? No. Does she need the manpower that I need? No. But does she have the same laws and rules that she has to follow? Yes. Do I know that she do that? Yes, I absolutely know with certainty that she does that. Now, I've been doing elections here in Colorado for 19 years. Next year will be 20 years. Rudy, I'll let you tell them how long you've been doing this.
Been doing this since '03, so 20 years.
So we've had a lot of experience within our office. Now, I know within every single detail of Colorado's process. I know the laws. I know the rules because I've been practicing them and implementing them for 19 years. Do I know that level of in-depthness for the other states for their elections? No. But what I do know, because I am also on a couple of national election boards as well, and I do know with confidence that at the end of the day, they have the same three pillars that we do. They are professional, so they do training, they do professionalism just like we do. We have training here in Colorado that makes sure that we become the experts that we need to. I know that they have that same level of professionalism. Do I know that every single one of them has some type of auditing process? Yes, every single state in the nation has some type of auditing process. Some of them are doing the risk limiting audit, some of them are doing some other scientific auditing. So I do know that as well. I also know they also have the transparency piece of their elections too. So with those three pillars, you can know that those elections are being run to the best of the ability for whatever model of an election that they are running in those states. That's how I can say with confidence that do I know that other states are doing elections to the best of their ability and above board? Yes, they are. So I want to say, at least for the election piece of the government, that people can definitely have confidence in their abilities. Do we have and have we had attempts of people coming, quote unquote, insider threats in the elections industry? Yes, we have. Do we have the safeguards to prevent and to have them be successful? Yes, we do. There's not been a single one of them that has been successful in either tampering or changing any type of election results. They have been litigated. There are a couple of cases actually here in Colorado that are currently on the books to go to trial. One of them has had another delay, so that one will happen in March. However, we, again, as you can tell, just from the processes that I have shown and talked about this evening, everything is double checked. Everything is triple checked. Everything has cameras and everything has a bipartisan human process to it, but again, a huge paper trail for it. And the biggest safeguard that we have in Colorado, but a lot of other states are actually now adopting, is the actual paper ballot. That is the official record of the election. I have to keep those for 25 months. Federal law requires every state to keep their ballots for 22 months. Colorado, we have a law that requires us to keep them for 25 months. That is in case something comes up in court, then we have the actual physical record of the paper ballot. That is what is the custodian of the election part of it. So I would say with that, I hope more people have the confidence, at least in the election part of it. I don't know any other piece of government, so I can't really tell you to have more confidence in the government. I know, my father retired from the sheriff's office. I know the process and procedures that he did in that area were above board. My mother also was in the court system for 16 years here in Will County. It's a very slow process with the courts, and I think that's why some people potentially get frustrated because it is kind of slow. But most of the people that are working in the courts are also trying to do the right thing as well. And there's a ton of different things in government, so I can't really speak to that aspect of it, but I do know the three areas that I'm in charge of: elections, motor vehicle, and recording. Hopefully people can have trust and faith that we're doing it above board and making sure that every T is crossed and I is dotted, because in all three of those departments, it's very crucial and important that those are done properly.
Thank you for answering that. Appreciate it. I did have Secretary of State Griswold had an interview last week with Aaron O'Toole and Engineer Noco, and she had mentioned about election worker safety. Can you talk a little bit about that? And is that something that Weld County has experienced?
Unfortunately, due to the rhetoric after the 2020 election, every single county in the state and nation has faced some type of threats. I will tell you guys, I have received 12 death threats myself personally. I do have an FBI agent assigned to me due to some of the level of the threats that I have received. So that is real. It has not been the funnest over the last 3 years. When you have the level of threats that have been waged upon you, like I have, it's really changed my day-to-day life. I have to take a different route to and from work every single day. I can't take the same way. I have to shop at different grocery stores every single time I go to a grocery store and try to get food. I have to come in and actually work different hours every single day, which actually, that's the hardest for me. Rudy can attest, I like to be with my team the same time that they're there. Unfortunately, due to some of the people that have sent me some of these threats, I am not able to work consistent hours every day, so I have to come in at different times. I have to leave at different times. And so it is definitely been a little bit of an change into the life because of, unfortunately, some people. I have really tried to have the focus here in Will County be on me. I have really tried to make sure people don't necessarily know who Rudy is and know who my election staff is and know who the election judges are, because I feel I am the person that has been out there in the public, and I will be the one that kind of protects them as much as I possibly can. I feel I've done an okay job of that.
She's done a fantastic job. I kind of feel bad that she has to take the burden of all the election rhetoric that's happened since 2020. But just want to thank you for protecting me and my family, as well as the election staff and the election judges. So thank you.
Yeah, and so with that, it is still consistent. I have two gentlemen that like to send me emails on a weekly basis. So they have been sending me an email since November 3rd, 2020 on a weekly basis. One of them actually lives across the street from the office, which is why I have to have such a different and weird situation. And he's actually come to the office a couple of times as well. So it is a reality. And unfortunately, there are some people that are so passionate and really believe some of the items that have been put out there that they have resorted, unfortunately, to behavior that would not be acceptable by my parents. I am 37 years old, and I tell you what, if I did any of the things that some of these people have done, my daddy, who is 70 years old, would still bend me over his knee and swat me on the butt. I promise you that.
Thank you for sharing that. And it is unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear. And pray for your safety and safety of all your staff. The last question that I had written before we open it up to staff, to the audience for questions, was about the lawsuit brought in Colorado, and I believe Minnesota was this week or will be next week, to keep Trump off of the ballot. Can you talk a little bit about that? Maybe some of the audience doesn't know as well.
Yes. So last week was the trial for Colorado. There were 6 voters in Colorado that brought forth a lawsuit underneath the 14th Amendment and underneath Section 3 of the United States Bill of Rights. And it is to determine if Trump should be allowed to be on the Colorado presidential election or not. The judge is still in recess for that. I can't speak too much for it because since I am a clerk, and I've also unfortunately received threats, I could potentially be called to testify in that. But it is to determine if there is any connection or anything that could potentially his actions or others around him have done that could keep him barred underneath that section of the 14th Amendment. I am sure that no matter what that judge rules, it will be appealed. We've already heard from both sides that no matter how that judge rules, it's going to be appealed, and they're more than likely going to appeal it all the way up to the Supreme Court, which ultimately I do believe is who should be determining that. So again, I'm all about making sure that everything is done above board, and so taking items to court is not a problem for me. I have even told some of the people that have had questions about elections, if you want, I'm more than happy. You can take me to court, and I won't try to dismiss it. I'm fully okay with that because I know the process and procedures that we do here in Will County, and I'm confident in those. So we'll kind of see where that goes. Like I said, the testifying on both sides and evidence presented on both sides did conclude on Friday. And I believe, from my understanding, is the judge will potentially make a ruling sometime this week. It does need to happen in a quick manner because for the March primary, we have to certify those candidates by January 5th. So that's a really tight turnaround. As I said earlier, courts move slower than molasses, and I need them to not work slow as molasses when it comes to a couple of these cases, when it comes to election stuff, because we do have hard cutoffs for every single election to actually go forward. So we're really hoping that she does make some type of determination and ruling by no later than this Friday this week. So then ultimately it will get appealed and it can work through the appeal process in an expedited manner because we have to know no later than January 5th.
Thank you. All right. Well, we'll open it up to you all. Are there any questions for our county clerk and recorder?
What do ballot measures 2I and 2J boil down to? Can you kind of give me a summary of those? Is that okay right now?
HH, you mean?
No, I and J. 2I, 2J, isn't that on there right now? No? This is my wife. She did it. So I don't know.
Is that on the, I think that's on the City of Greeley ballot?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is that the one for the police, like captains and the fire captains, to be classified as employees?
Yeah, we wouldn't have that level of detail. We just put on the election.
Okay,
So
that's fine.
we don't
That's fine.
we're nonpartisan, so we try to operate in a nonpartisan manner, and so that's. But we do have, I believe the City of Greeley has information on their website for pro and con statements, I believe, and so we would recommend that you go to that website to try and see what information they have as far as pros for it and cons for it.
Okay, thank you. And then I have one other question. How are ballot locations chosen?
So the different locations that we use and how we choose them is historically where we've used them in the past because of, like I said, voters are creatures of habit. All humans are creatures of habit, and so we try to be consistent on that. When we are looking at different voting locations, we do look at traffic patterns. So we want to see, is there a bus route that is close, that drops off close to a voter service and polling center? So that's one of the things that we look at. We also look at past historical turnout as well. And so if we see that there is higher turnout, then we're probably going to go ahead and place an in-person voting location. If it's a little bit lower, then we probably will go ahead and put a 24-hour box in that location. To be honest, since we have started implementing those 24-hour boxes, more people are electing to use those than actually going and voting in person. Even last year's election, we didn't even have 5% turnout at actual in-person. 95%, almost 96% of people actually either use USPS or our drop boxes to participate in the election. So that's why we have determined, according to the voters of Will County, they are telling us that they want to actually use those drop boxes instead of voting in person. So we will continue to invest in more of those. When, again, like I said, we're also looking at, as you guys probably know, Weld County is over 3,000 square miles. That's a lot of area to cover. And so we also look at potentially like New Raymer. We have a 24-hour box in New Raymer because if I didn't have something out there, then how long would it take for them to come into Greeley to drop off that box? That is an hour drive for somebody in New Raymer to come to Greeley. It's actually closer for them to go to Sterling than it is for them to come to Greeley. So obviously in Grover, which is an hour and a half from Greeley. They're closer to Kimball, Nebraska. That's a 15-minute drive from Grover to Kimball, Nebraska. So those are the type of different things that we also are looking at is where are these voters living? How can we make it easier for them to participate without having to use USPS? Like I said, we do have a great working relationship with USPS, but there are points in election where they just can't be our partners anymore. So that's how we determine kind of where we place those drop boxes. Again, voter turnout determines those type of things as well. We've looked at demographics before. We try to look at every single piece of data that we can so that we are meeting the voters where they are.
say there's any accessibility or any other barrier that would help increase voter participation? Just 30% super low. What do you think is blocking those things? And is there anything that would be tangible that you could improve to make that better?
Yeah, we're always trying to increase our voter turnout. So you mentioned disabilities. Oops, sorry. One of the things that we have been and we have released with the help of the Secretary of State is the method for anybody that has a disability that is homebound, since they aren't able to come out and maybe they don't want to actually use their mail ballot. We actually have an online system for them that they're able to use. That online system, so let's say if they have sip and puff or they have clickers or however mechanism they use, even they can also hook up to, if they have a computer and it hooks up to their wheelchair, that site is capable with any of those type of mechanisms. We also have ADA machines at all of our voter service centers as well. So again, if they have like a sip and puff or they have paddles or they have some other mechanism that they use, we actually have a machine that they can hook up to then be able to cast their ballot independently. And again, like I said, we try to make sure that we have locations, either a drop box or an in-person site that is close to any type of bus route or any type of easy accessible manner to get there in a timely manner. Again, kind of central located. That's kind of why we have Trinity Lutheran, because it's at 35th and Highway 34. So it's easy access off of the highway for people. Again, we're also looking and coordinating with the disability community, because I do actually quite a bit of work with them, to also encourage group facilities, if they have the ability, to make sure that we can come in and we can give those voters their ballot directly to them, and then help and assist in any manner of marking their ballot for them, not influencing them. There's a difference. We don't influence, but we can help and assist if we need, and then if they want, and then collect those ballots back as well. So we really have tried to look at any type of ways that potentially could be blocking somebody, but we're always open to new views. If somebody sees something, I would love to have that conversation, because again, we really want to encourage everybody that's eligible to participate.
My question was about whether, or does your office get involved in voter registration security? Like making sure that people who are registering to vote are legitimately supposed to get a ballot?
Yeah, absolutely. When you register to vote via electronically or a paper ballot, you either have to provide your Colorado driver's license or your ID, or the last four of your social security number. And we have a statewide voter registration system that actually taps to that to make sure that you're legitimately a U.S. citizen. As you know, when you go get your driver's license, you have to show a plethora of information as far as like a birth certificate, a utility bill, tons of things. I had to take my daughters to get their permits the other day, and I just remember pulling out all kinds of information so that way I could prove who they were. And with that being said, they do allow non-citizens driver's license as well, but those are also tagged in the system. So if they do try to register to vote, our voter registration system pulls up red flags saying that, nope, this person is not eligible to vote. And then we'll have correspondences with them to make sure that that is indeed the case, because maybe they got naturalized or something. So if that's the case, then we want to make sure that if they're a naturalized citizen of the United States, that they're able to cast their vote.
This question may have two parts, but it's concerning Proposition II. Does it primarily concern the nicotine and like cigarette tobacco sellers? Does the taxes concern them only, or anyone else?
From our understanding, it is just to the people who purchase those items.
Okay. And then kind of a second part. This I have the proposition right here in front of me. I'm reading, and ends with, for exceeding an estimate included in the ballot information booklet for Proposition EE. And what was Proposition EE? Because I don't have that anywhere on here. What's that referencing?
So we have that information linked on our website. So if you go to weldvotes.gov, then you can pull out what is referred to as the statewide blue book. and that can give you more information, in-depth information on EE and HH and II. So I would recommend go to there because it breaks it down as far as what the question is asking. Because obviously, unfortunately, in Colorado and across the nation, they do have to write those in kind of legalese. That is one thing that I have been trying to get corrected. I would like it to be in plain language because unless you have, a paralegal degree or a law degree, sometimes those questions are like, what are you trying to ask me? So with those booklets, that's what we're trying to help with, is to try and break those legalese down. And it will give people have the opportunity to write a pro statement, so in support of it, and then people have the opportunity to write a con statement, which are obviously people not in support of it. Again, those are summarized to the best of the people's ability at the state level to then try and those are nonpartisan people, by the way. They're not anything that are partisan. Those are nonpartisan groups that are summarizing those statements that get submitted. But I would recommend definitely go to our website. Like I said, we have a direct link to the Blue Book, and we also have a direct link to our Tabor notice that we're required to send out as well.
Thanks.
We try to get all the information in a central location. So any questions for elections, every single election, we have our interactive map that shows all the voting locations and 24-hour boxes. So you can just click on that one and get directions straight to it. We have all the information, like the information tablets, the Blue Book, and the Tabor notice directly on there. We have the county-wide sample ballot. We are very unique here in Weld County, and we actually have the most complicated ballot in the state. And the reason why we have the most complicated ballot in the state is because we have 17 school districts. We have 33 municipalities. We have over 500 special districts. Special districts are fire, sanitation, water, all of that fun stuff. We have a lot of them. And so because of that, it does make our ballots the most complicated in the state, because there isn't a single other county in the state that has 17 school districts. That's just us. So we're unique in that manner. So that's why we do a county-wide sample ballot. So when you pull up that sample ballot, either on the website or even in that Tabor notice, it shows everything. Obviously, you as a voter can't vote on everything. If you live in the city of Greeley, you can't actually vote on the mayor of Fort Lupton because you don't live there, and vice versa. So just so kind of be aware of those sample ballots. They are county-wide sample ballots, so everything that you see on there is not what you're going to see on your ballot. I really can talk about elections all night long, so don't be afraid. It's kind of one of my favorite things. I'm a nerd. It's fine.
Any other? Yeah, go ahead, Merrick.
So I want to thank you, first of all, for coming here and explaining in very much detail of I didn't know what all was happening. Lots of education there, and then I was gonna ask whether you were more in favor of paper ballots or not, and you just answered that as well. And then also voting on election day. I don't know, maybe it's just natural procrastinator in me that I want to just vote on the election day, and I felt maybe a lot of perceived problems maybe be solved if it's just election day, but I also understand that some people may not be able to get there and things like that. So I think there's been more of a push to get more mail-in ballots through the last almost like a decade. Would you say, and you were kind of mentioning that if you can vote earlier rather than election day, then you can have that first at 7:10, right? The first unofficial release. Could you explain a little bit why voting earlier rather than in election day would benefit the whole system?
Absolutely. So I believe voting and getting your ballot in earlier, one, because like I said, at 7:10 p.m., he's been a candidate. I've been a candidate. His family knows the stress of election night and election day. My family knows the stress of election day. When you have that type of investment, so I'm going to kind of speak to that first. So as somebody who works campaigns and is supportive of or has run for office, that first initial set of election results can really kind of tell you if we have enough, if you are successful in your bid. As somebody who's run for office, you and your family and supporters put in a lot of hours. you are really trying to get out there and talk to as many people as possible. And for yourself, it's very long and enduring. For your family, it's even more intense. I would say it's probably election night has always been worse on my family than honestly it's been me, because they have always been so great in wanting to support me in my efforts. And I'm sure you can say the same thing. Your wife is there. I'm sure she was like, yeah, I definitely feel like it was worse on me than him. No. But it's a lot of work. So in that aspect, when we're able to see those early unofficial results, you can come to peace with it. You can come to you are successful or you're not successful in a little quicker of a manner. Now, when it comes to actually the election piece of it, I'll take that candidate hat off and supporter of things hat off and put my elections nerd part back on. One of the main things that is really important is I have checks and balances throughout my whole entire process that I went through this evening. It is very important that I keep those in every aspect of the election, no matter what time in the election that it is. I am not going to speed up my process and potentially have to sacrifice my transparency, sacrifice my integrity, or sacrifice my security of my election because somebody has waited until the last minute and now people are calling at me and yelling at me because, well, why aren't you done? Why are you shutting down and coming back the next day? Like, I want the results right now. Unfortunately, I think in society today, people are so wanting that instant gratification that they don't have the patience anymore to understand that, again, I know what my throughput is in my process. On election day, I can handle 25,000 ballots or less without having to come back and count the next day. Last election in 2022, I received over 50,000 ballots back after 4 p.m. on election day. Again, I'm not going to sacrifice my election and the integrity of my election to get those processed in an expedited manner. Every single ballot, if it's received on election day or if it's received early, will be treated with the same respect in our process. If it's earlier, obviously, you're going to stop getting the phone calls, which is always nice. Stop getting those political phone calls. But it also is going to be a part of those first initial results. So you're going to be part of the first wave of this is how Will County has voted. This is the message that we're sending to the rest of the state. Then if you wait until election day and after 4 p.m., your part of your piece of that voice is not going to be released until Thursday or potentially Friday of that election week. And so on the other part with the election judges, these people are taking time out of their lives to come and volunteer and do this part and this process. And I want to be respectful of their time because they don't have to do it. But I have to have election judges to do this. Me and my elections team, we work, this is our full-time job. This is what we do every single day of the year. But when it comes to the actual election, it is the volunteers that are doing the election. We are handing this process over to them to perform. I want to make sure, and I feel that it's my responsibility, that I'm not working them to the bone. I want to make sure on election day, that's already at minimum a 12-hour day for somebody. I have election judges that literally drive an hour to come in and perform this duty, and I want to make sure that I'm not sending them on the road tired and not capable of being able to go home successfully. I don't want to have that on my caution, on my mind. I don't want to have that. And so making sure that we get enough early votes done, that we have the process, the time, because election day happens if I'm ready or not. Yes, I have until 9 days after election day to count the ballot, but life happens. And so when life happens, you want to make sure that your voice is heard. Turn your ballot in early because you just never know. We have had voters that have cast their ballot and that same day have passed away because you just never know. Life can happen. And so if it is an election that you are very passionate about, that you want to make sure that your voice is heard, I always recommend that you cast your ballot early because, one, you're guaranteed that you're going to have it. Because if you cast your ballot before any untimely thing happens, that is still going to count. We do a whole bunch of process to make sure that people that have deceased get off our records. Don't worry. We don't have dead voters on our rolls. But That's why those are just some of the items that I always try to instill in people is why I support returning your ballot early. There's a lot of different factors. There's a lot of different things that people need to consider. Like I said, being on the candidate side, there's that side. Being an election judge, there's that side. But then most importantly, we want to make sure that we have a good sounding voice. And the more we have early, the louder our voice can be. Obviously, I'm going to still count every single ballot until we have counted all eligible ballots. But it is also really important to make sure that this is how Will County has voted, especially with us being such a strong county. We have a lot of high voter turnout. We're one of the strongest voter turnouts, even with this election, with potentially being in the 30 percentile. And so we really have an impact here in Will County. And I would like to make sure that it is known earlier than later.
Yeah, I appreciate your answer, and I was just, I don't know, it's just maybe me kind of trying to compare what is now and what was before. And did we always have a mail-in, or how long ago was that was instituted in Colorado?
So mail-in ballots, actually, we started that back in 1992. So it isn't a new thing for Colorado. So with that in 1992, we did have the process that was an excused absentee. That's what it was referred to. So you had to actually have a reason. There were very limited reasons that you could get a mail ballot at that time. That practice was done all the way through 2004. In 2004, there was legislation that was passed to where it was non-excused absentee, so then it was open up to anybody and everybody. That was tracking because more voters were asking for those, because let's be honest, society today is 24 hours. Our society runs 24 hours, 7 days a week. People don't just work from 8 to 5 anymore. People work all hours of the day. So for our society, and to make sure that, again, we in elections are meeting the voters where they're at, in 2004, like I said, we passed a bill that changed it to non-excused absentee, so then you could get it if you wanted it or not. It was up to you. We also kind of changed how people participated in Will County. We went from in-person polling locations, which you had to go to your specific neighborhood to vote in. The reason why we changed that, especially in Will County, we were actually the second county in the nation to go to the vote center model, is because in Weld County, not a lot of people live and work in Will County. We have a lot of people that go either to Larimer County or down into the Denver metro area to work. And so it became more difficult for them to actually make it on election day to their neighborhood between the hours of 7 and 7 to actually cast their ballot. So we were actually starting to see a decrease in participation because of that old method. And so we went to vote centers. What vote centers were, again, we opened them up early, just like we have our early in-person, but it became to where those vote centers, if you were a registered voter in Will County, we had 35 or 36 of them initially.
36.
Yep, we had 36 of them initially. So we went from 109 precincts in 2004, so 109 voting locations in 2004, down to 36 locations in 2005. And again, we did all that data analysis to determine where would be the best place to put them. If you are a voter in Will County, you now could actually get a mail ballot if you requested it from us. But then you also had the ability, no matter where you worked, you could go to any one of those 36 and we would have a ballot for you at that location. So that's kind of Will County's history. That was then adopted by the rest of the state. It became an option for the other 62 counties. The first county that did that was in 04, and that was Larimer County. We were the second in the nation to do it in 05. And then all the rest of the counties followed very shortly after, because they're like, oh, hey, we have a transient population too. That actually makes some sense. And we started to see an uptick again in voter participation because of that. Also, due to the years of 2005 to 2007, we saw that a lot of people were like, heck yes, I want to actually have a mail ballot. Like, that is 1,000 times easier for me to request that from you. So in 2007, we actually passed another bill because of the voters telling us how they wanted to participate. So in 2007, we passed another bill that said you can now request to be on a permanent mail-in list. And so in 2008 was the first time that we underneath, so this is the funny thing. Rudy was my boss before I became the boss. So he was the elections manager. So underneath him and the prior clerk, what my team and I did, underneath Rudy was we mailed every single voter in Will County a letter saying, hey, do you want to become a member of the permanent mail-in voter list? Weld County, due to that, we actually had some of the highest requests to be put on that permanent mail-in list in the state. Within a year, we had 83% of the voters on our registration rolls requesting to be put on a permanent mail-in list. That is huge. That's a lot of our voters that said, I do no interest of going and voting in person. I don't want to use your vote centers. I want you 22 days in advance, mail me my ballot for every single election that I'm eligible for. So we had a super high, in a short amount of time, adoption of becoming a permanent mail-in voter. By 2012, the rest of the state, the total amount of voter registration records on record in the state, 77% of them statewide were on the permanent mail-in list. Because we had such a high adoption of being on the permanent mail-in list from registered voters in the state of Colorado, in 2013, we crafted and did a bill that now created the election model that we have today. So then 2013, we wrote a over 200-page bill, which was very painful, very painful bill, a lot of reading in a very short time frame. But we crafted that bill to now adopt what we have in today's election model. We're the first in the nation to have this election model. So we took the good things from Oregon and Washington, which were strictly mail-in. They have no in-person voting in Washington and Oregon. We didn't feel like that was the correct thing for Colorado, so we kind of molded different election models. So that's why everybody automatically gets an all-mail ballot, like it gets a ballot mailed to you 20 days in advance, but we still have that in-person adoption because we still have a small percentage of people that want to participate in the tradition, what is referred to as traditional voting, which is going in person. And so since 2013, like I said, we are now at under 5% of the people that participate in our elections here in Will County actually go and vote in person. The rest of everybody that participates is returning that mail ballot. Again, we're pretty high in the statistics here in the state, but on average, now across the state, if you're in the Denver metro area, only around 10 to 12% actually utilize the in-person method. The rest of the voters actually participate by returning their mail ballot. So that's kind of the history of where we're at in Colorado. At the end of the day, it's all been voter driven. It's not because, I've been in this and this is how I want to do it. It's because we look at how voters are participating. Our main goal is to make sure that you have that option to cast a ballot. And again, like I have said multiple times this evening, we're trying to meet the voter where you're at because it is important for people to participate in this election. That is what makes, I'm maybe a little biased, but that is what makes our country great, is that your ballot matters. At the end of the day, your ballot doesn't care if you got 2 cents in the bank or you got 2 million in the bank. Those ballots are equal, and they're just as important and valuable in our process because your voice is heard. Even if it's not the winning voice, it is heard. It is counted correctly. And so it is really important that we in the elections world are doing everything we can to give you that option, no matter what type of lifestyle that you're leaving. If my husband sometimes works nights, he sometimes is on days. It just kind of depends on your job, what hours you work. And so again, making sure that you have that ability to participate in our living and breathing government, because that's the type of government we have. It's living and breathing, and it depends on the breath that is determined by how we participate in our elections, how big of a breath it is or how small it is. That's just kind of my own personal opinion. I'll get off my soapbox now.
So thank you very much for explaining everything and all the detail. And I'm this last question. I'm not gonna hog the rest of the time.
I told you I can speak up here about hours about elections. I'm a nerd. It's okay.
Yeah. So the one thing I was gonna ask you is that once it leaves your hands, you said that the professionalism, having the audits, and then the third one was the transparency, was the key kind of like 3 pillars of what you can count on. And once it leaves your hands, all those marbles that go for, say, one candidate and the other candidate, is there a transparency going towards the state and Secretary of State that you could actually engage in with the other county recorders? Like, say, 64 players at the table, divided into 2 teams. I collect so many marbles, we set them all out. How is that send off to the Secretary of State happens? Is that by phone call? Is it electronic? How does that happen?
So
Thank you.
as Rudy was describing with that cast vote record, it is transmitted through a secure FTP site. So it is a secured link to the Secretary of State's website and internet facing. Like I said, it is a secure FTP that we actually put and drop into a secure folder. Then that gets distributed up to the Secretary of State's office. It's also, it's called hashing. So the file is hashed. So what hashing is, it's a unique code that gets put on the file that if anything changes within that file, it's going to automatically change that hash. So then we will know that that file has been tampered with. So we have the hashing mechanism. So it's like I said, it's a really long, super huge digit that gets put onto that file once we create it and secure it. And we have that hash. And so we will put the file into one folder, and then we will communicate to the Secretary of State what that hash code is. So then once they pull it, they can verify that the hash that we have and put on that file is the same hash that they have once it comes to them. So that is one of the ways that all 64 counties do that. So we all have that same required measure of hashing and securely putting it onto the secured FTP site to get into then the auditing system. So we're a paper-based election model because we're a mail ballot, so we're paper-based. However, we do, required by federal law, have the voting equipment. So we have the ballot marking devices that you can use to mark your ballot, and then it will literally print you your own ballot for them to be turned in. So again, it's still paper. That ballot marking device doesn't store or keep anything that you mark on your ballot. It's literally just a computer that prints your ballot for you. And so that mechanism, and then our scanners, obviously they're machines, and they're the ones that do the official count of it. But at the end of the day, the paper ballot is the official record of the election, not the cast vote record or the results that come out of that. At the end of the day, the court will only recognize the actual paper ballots. I think that's kind of what you're asking, right?
So could an election be determined, though, prior to a court determination? In other words, let's verify these things, but yeah, sure enough, it didn't check out. But at that point, the election's maybe already concluded or not.
Yes, so part of our daily reconciliation that we do, so we can verify that all of the information that we are putting in the ballots that we counted are correct and accurate. We do actually have security measures on the ballot. There are different things that we know that is a official ballot. We're actually piloting another security feature on a ballot. It's called Ghost Mark, and it's only can be seen by black light. And so it's a unique seal along with my signature. So that's just another thing that we're adding onto the ballot. The ballot paper is a secured method. It's a very specific weight that's not commercially available. So if anybody tries to copy my ballot, it's not going to work because the weight's not going to be correct. You saw what's called timing marks around there. If you try to copy that, the timing marks are going to be incorrect as well. So there's a lot of different things with even in the ballot that we're looking at to verify, and we've been doing that for a long time as well, to verify that is an official ballot that's coming through. So we have that ability to see if anybody attempts to do a fake ballot or not. We have not had anybody in Will County attempt that, so thank goodness for that. But we have ways to catch that. And so once we have done the audit and we have the canvassing board come in, so again, it's a third party group that's coming in and doing the canvassing. What canvassing is I'm there to tell the story of the election. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. I have to show them everything. I have to show them all the reports. I have to show them any incident reports that have potentially have happened during the election, all the documentation, along with the audit. They are the ones that are overseeing the audit as well. And so again, that's how we know with 100% certainty those paper ballots have been counted correctly by the machine. And they're then going to be the ones, after we give them this presentation, they have the ability to then certify the election, and that then becomes from unofficial results to official results at that point in time. Then there is a certain amount of time, I want to say it's just under 3 months, that somebody could take the election to court if they would like to challenge it. So there still is a mechanism to challenge election results if there is any need to do so. There is a window for people to file that. But once that has been certified, so everything in the election has been reviewed and signed off by that bipartisan canvas board, then everything is official at that point.
You know, I'm not an IT guy. I know there's quite a few guys here tonight that are, but I know I've seen advertisements on my phone from conversations I've been having with people. You know, ads show up. You know, so it's not just the process. Your explanations are very assuring, but sometimes I don't trust the machines, and I've heard things said about the machines like. Because those are outside of your control. All your processes take place outside of the machine itself, I think. But is it possible? Can you give me any added assurance on these machines even not being tampered with, where they crank out? You vote for A and the machine makes it a B or something. I've heard machines. Of course, there was the lawsuits with Fox and so on that seem to have been resolved. But some of these machines are used in even other countries where elections do seem to be a little more in question. Is there any confidence we can have that, or can you dispel any of the doubt we might have even on the machines themselves?
Sure. So I'll try to not completely nerd out right now. But so at the federal government, we have the EAC. It's the Elections Assistant Commission. It was created in 2002 after who remembers the 2000 presidential election? Yeah, hanging chads, forever ingrained in my mind. I will never forget that. And I still decided to come into this industry. I don't know what was wrong with me. So did you. You came in after 2000 as well. We still decided to do that.
Because we didn't know any better. That's why.
I guess not. But so that was created in 2002, the Elections Assistant Commission. With that creation of that federal board, also then required vendor-required testing and certification. So every single vendor is required to go through that certification. They have to not only give over all of the equipment, they have to give over all of the lines of code, they have to give over their financials, they have to give over the ownership documents. So it's not just the machines that are getting tested and audited, but it's actually the whole kit and caboodle of this business. I know that a lot of people are like, oh, well, this Cuban guy has investments into this company. No, he doesn't. He has no association. I know that's one of the things that has been kind of going around and circulating since 2020. We know that because they, to maintain their certification, have to provide every single owner, investor, all of that documentation to be investigated by the EAC. So they have auditors that go through and review all of that. So they have forensic auditors. Those are actually what their job is to review financials and that aspect of the company. But then you also have the certified testing labs that go through every single piece of code in the machines. They have every single access, and they have to provide that over. If they don't, then they don't get to go through the certification process. The certification process on initial equipment takes a year to a year and a half to actually complete. Once that federal certification is completed and everything is signed off and everything is okay and approved and they're certified, then they have the ability to actually go and sell that equipment to the states. Now in Colorado and quite a few other states have adopted a second level of testing and certification. So if the vendor wants to come into Colorado and sell their voting equipment to Colorado, they have to essentially not only resubmit what was done at the federal level, they have to resubmit everything again at the Colorado level to then get recertified for sale in Colorado. So everything that they did at the feds has to essentially be done again at the Colorado level. So they have to, again, for our certified accredited lab, they have to resubmit everything again. So they have to provide their code, they have to provide the machines that they're going to be using, even all the way down to the mouse and the keyboard has to be submitted as part of that approval process and certification process, along again with all their financials and investors and owners and all of that information as well. So in Colorado, and like I said, I think 37 states plus Colorado, so a total of 38 states have that double certification requirement. Not all states have that double certification requirement, but Colorado is one of the ones that has that double certification process. So not only do they have to get approved and through the federal level, but they also have to get approved through the Colorado certification for then me as a county election official to actually be able to purchase that equipment. A lot of the stuff that has been put out there as far as, oh, well, you know, your server's in Germany. No, it's not. It's literally in my building underneath lock and key. We have a true air gap system. So our stuff has never and will not ever touch a network and or internet. It only is connected to itself. So you can literally come into my office, and we have had people come in and get on your hands and knees and follow the wires if you would like. From the scanner, follow the wire directly to the server. And the adjudication computer, follow that wire directly to the server. And you can also see that server is not and has no network connection to any other thing. The only thing it touches is power. So with that, I can sit here and tell you with 100% that we have a true air gap system. So there is not a piece of equipment within my control and or before that has touched the internet, because what we do before I accept that equipment for me to actually use, we do a trusted build process. What the trusted build process is when they bring that piece of equipment to me, we will put it through its paces, and it's a trusted build paces. So we will create an election, we will vote ballots, we will do and make sure that that piece of equipment is functioning to how it is supposed to function. When and if that piece passes all of that, then I will then accept it into my custody, and we will use that. Before every single election, we also do logic and accuracy testing as well. So what that is we bring in outside people appointed by the two different parties to come in and test the system. So we have what is referred to as a test deck. That is why it's very fun, because we have the most complicated ballot in the state, like I said. And with all of our different ballot styles, my office is required to test every single possibility a voter can mark a ballot. Every single possibility. My test decks are always, at the minimum, 500 different ballots. In the 2020 presidential election, my test ballot was 2,700 ballots that had to be run through the system. And then those outside members of the testing board are given blank ballots. They can mark them however they want to mark them. They hand count those ballots according to how they have marked them. And then we put that through the machines. They randomly select which ones they want to test, so it is up to them. Obviously, before they come in, I don't know which machine they're going to test. They that morning will pick whichever machine they want to test. Like I said, fill out their own ballots. They will hand count them. We will run my test deck, which has been hand counted, through it. We'll run the results, compare the hand count to the machine count. It's usually always the hand count that is wrong. I am not an advocate for hand counting because of how many tests we have done. It's always been the hand count that has been wrong, every single time. Then we will clear out the results from my test deck. We will run another zero report so they know that there is nothing currently on the system. We'll run their ballots through. We'll tally theirs. We'll do the hand count comparison to the machine count. As long as that all is correct, they will sign off. If they do not sign off on my logic and accuracy testing, I cannot proceed with the election. It is a hard stop. So we have been successful in going forward and doing every single election. So we have passed the logic and accuracy testing every single time. And so that is part of the testing that we actually do before every election. We also do the trusted build. So again, like I said, none of our voting equipment ever touches a network. However, you guys have computers probably at home. You all have your cell phones. How many times do those get updated? All the time. Because why? They are either connected to a cell phone network, an internet network, or some other type of network, correct? My voting equipment has never been on a network. So there's no possible way for it to have any type of upgrades or changes to it unless we go through the trusted build process. So let's say when we're building the ballot and I say, hey vendor, this would be really nice if you could change this feature because it'd be a little bit easier for me to build the ballot if I had this capability. If they go in and say, okay, yes, Carly, that's actually a good idea, let's do that, they have to go back through that testing all over again and that certification all over again. So if they make any changes to their code, it has to go back through the feds and it has to go back through Colorado testing again and then goes through the trusted build process. So then they're able to come, because they have to physically come to my equipment because they can't just VPN into it. They can't just log in, remote log into it because it's not on anything. They have to physically come and do the trusted build upgrade. So that trusted build upgrade, of course, has been hashed, has different security measures in it, so we know that what has been certified is what we're getting. I have all that documentation. Like I said, I am an election nerd. I am a clerk that actually reads through all of it, so I do know what is coming. There have been some other clerks that have not done that, so they were uneducated and didn't know what was happening in a trusted build, unfortunately. I am not that type of clerk. Like I said, I'm a nerd and I'm okay with it. And I read all of that, so I do know exactly what is happening during that trusted build process. They will go in, do that upgrade, we'll rehash everything, make sure it's legit, and then move on and do that again before the next election. That whole logic and accuracy testing is done again. And that was a short version. There's a lot more to it, but that was like the shortest I could possibly make it for you guys.
And then one thing I just want to add too, Carly does yearly background checks on all of us, making sure that there's no elements of fraud or any type of white-collar crimes that are on our record. And then anybody who's part of the trusted build too, who's in that room, Carly has to perform additional background checks on them too, to make sure that nobody's been convicted of any election offenses or any type of fraud. And so multiple times throughout the year, right here, this guy, all kinds of background checks.
He passes every time. I pass too.
My name's Dave, and thank you so much for explaining everything and all the election integrity in Colorado. I love it. I'm kind of a nerd in that way too, of wanting to make sure all things are safe and that I know that my vote counts and everything, and tell people. But it seems like Colorado, we've got a lot of checks and balances here, and you've been ensuring that. Other states, I know there's different things that I think we've all seen videos of different things, like you mentioned, bipartisan, always doing that here. There's many cases that has not been done in other states, or not self-audit and things like that. And
perceived, yes.
Yeah,
I would say perceived.
Yeah, and in videos that has been seen, ballot stuffing, things like that. And if you, with your position as a clerk, county clerk here, is there things you would say to other states, their clerks, or the voters to encourage greater, election integrity, knowing that as things are perceived, again, other states or seen or known, it calls into question kind of everyone in that position. And you want to be above reproach in your position, and I really believe you are, and I appreciate that. And it seems like maybe other places there's not as much of that. And I don't know if you could speak to that, or what you could do, or what you would encourage others to do to try to improve things there.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that comment. Thank you very much, but also the question as well. So what we have, we are considered to be the high-level standard of elections here in Colorado, just because of everything that we do and all the processes that we have. And so what we do a lot is when we go to national conferences, we share everything that we have. If there's a clerk that's like, how do you do this? I'm going to not only tell them, but I'm going to share all of the stuff that goes along with that process, because I'm not ashamed to steal and redo. Like, I'm totally okay with that. And I'm completely fine with somebody else stealing my work too in this industry, because it is important that every single voter has that confidence that their vote is being counted correctly and their voice is being heard. With that, especially after and during the 2020 election, a lot of states had to make a hard shift to mail ballots. And when you saw videos coming out, it wasn't because they didn't have the security or the transparency. They just hadn't had the ability to do the in-depth process analysis that we have here in Colorado. So all of it was human error, actually. It wasn't anything to do with the machines. And it was because it was such a new process and procedures for them that it was a little bit challenging for them to do that in like literally 180. They had days to do what we have cultivated over multiple decades here in Colorado. And so we sent out, I know that I sent out all of our stuff, my judge's manual, my materials. I sent that out to almost every single state to try and help them out as much as we possibly could. Of course, it depends on what's in their law. Not everybody has the election model that we have here. So, you know, they had to use and take some of it, not use it, and use some of it, and so forth and so on. Since then, there has, with the EAC, there's now been created a local leadership council at the federal level. And so there's representation from every single state. All 50 states have representation. There's 2 people from every state. I'm actually one of them from Colorado that's on that local leadership council. And what we're trying to do is, again, share all the different policies and practices and procedures that we have so that it can continue to elevate other states that could be behind where we're at here in Colorado and other states as well. There are other states that are almost as good. I won't say they're as good as us. No. Just because I'm from Colorado, you know, I gotta make sure that we're number one still. But that are also doing that same as well, sharing as much as we possibly can. Because at the end of the day, like I said before, every single person that I've met that has been an election official, that has been the person on the boots on the ground running elections, they all have that same passion of wanting to make sure that they're doing it correctly, that it can't be called into question. You know, we've had that battle since even before 2000 in the George Bush election. And so, you know, it's been decades upon decades of people having concerns over elections, right? There's a reason why there are federal laws that have been put into place. There's a reason why your ballot is now and is a constitutional requirement to be private, right? 'Cause in the 1910s, 20s, and 30s, people would literally force you to vote a certain way, and then you had to prove it, right? So there's all those different mechanisms. And so that's kind of where we're at right now as well. These states have been now doing their election model for quite a few years. They've had to obviously go into court and justify their process and procedures. They've had to obviously do a lot of public information as well. And again, that's kind of what we have been doing on the national level, is with this local leadership council, sharing the resources, providing information, giving them my training on all the different aspects like signature verification, making sure that they understand just all the different nuances that are a part of handwriting analysis, and making sure that they have the proper resources that they potentially could look at a local level. Maybe they have somebody on their local PD or within their DA's office or their courts that is a handwriting expert that could potentially help with their judges and train their judges. So that's some of the things that we have been doing, and I have particularly been doing myself, again, to try and have everybody as elevated as they possibly can going into another presidential year, because it is really important that people have that confidence that their voice is being heard.
Well, I appreciate your helping other states. That concerns me, because I think, why do other states need the help? Like, what would be the discrepancy, you know, with it going so well in Colorado? And I appreciate all of your explanations. But like, I was thinking of overhearing this gentleman here, Dave. Yeah, I saw videos too. I wondered, you said you close at midnight and then it opens at 5. And then we saw videos that were time-stamped where there were people moving around and doing things. And that is really concerning, and there's probably different thoughts as to why that was occurring, you know, but I don't know how that can be helped in some of these states, you know, that's going on. Do you have any thought? I mean, thank you for letting me even express this question, because my husband knows all the time. We're looking at each other. Who do we tell and talk to and express concern about this? Because it is a live concern. That basically look like our vote doesn't count, you know. yeah. Anyway, you
Yeah.
understand.
No, I definitely understand. Like I said, I've been having that same conversation with voters since 2020, and I'm sure you're referring more to the Georgia video is what you're referring to. I have actually looked into the Georgia video. It's actually quite a question that I've received for a long time, so I can address that directly. But I'll go to your first question first. How we have kind of had conversations over the last, my 19 years, Rudy's 20 plus years in elections is the people on the East Coast are very traditional. Even still today, they're very, very traditional. Where us on the West Coast, we're not so tied down into tradition. Kind of how we explain it is the people that, went west are the ones that are, wanting to be pushing that boundary, be the ones that are out exploring, right? That's kind of why the West was won. The West was founded, was because of the people that wanted to go outside of the normal box. People usually on the Eastern Coast, like I said, are usually very traditional still in their life. And so that includes kind of how they even vote. It's very traditional mechanisms where, like I said, there's a reason why Colorado, Oregon, and Washington, we were the first ones to really kind of do this whole mail ballot thing. And then it's slowly been trickling to the East Coast. So for example, South Carolina, they are still so traditional that they can't even start tallying their ballots until after 7 p.m. on election day. I can start tallying and counting 15 days prior to election day. So that's how Colorado can beat with early unofficial results before even South Carolina, and they shut down 2 hours before we do. So those are like one difference of how we're trying to help some of those, to be honest, East Coast states kind of catch up. New York actually took up until the very last year possible to get rid of the old lever machines and actually adopt the ADA acceptable machines that we have to have. They were the last ones. They were the last holdouts because they just did not want to get rid of their lever machines. I don't know how many of you used to vote on those lever machines, but those things were tricky as all get out. And like you got off on one little booger on the backside, and oh my gosh, you had to shut the whole thing down and take it apart. I mean, they were very sketchy. I'll be honest with you. But New York just got rid of those in 2016. So they're very traditional on the East Coast. And so when we're saying we're trying to have them catch up a little bit, it's to get them out of that mindset that, well, this is how it's always done and we're going to do it this way. So that's kind of why. Obviously, 2020 forced a lot of them to, like I said, do that 180. And because of everything that happened in 2020 and making sure voters had that ability to vote, it was hard for them to change to a mail ballot within days, like I said. So now that those laws are on the books and this is now how they have to do elections, we continue to support them to try and get their voters and themselves to be better at what they're doing. Now to the Georgia video, like I said, I've actually looked at that video myself quite a few times. I've actually also looked at the investigative report that was done by the district attorney there and the Secretary of State's office. That was so there was actually 3 investigations that were done on that video, and in every single one of the investigations, the official investigation, I will say official investigations, there's been obviously outside people that are looking at the video. Most of those people, when they look at, don't understand what is going on. With that video, they have, in that Fulton County video, I'm assuming, which is the one you're talking about, that Fulton County video, what they actually have in Fulton County, we have clear tubs, and that's what we do. They have black boxes that they put their batches of ballots in. We use clear tubs to put our batches of ballots in, but they are lock and sealed and have the chain of custody as well. And so when you see them rolling it, they initially, with the first set of unofficial results, there was a wide enough spread that the Fulton County election official said, you know what, it's 10 o'clock. I'm sending my people home. We're going to shut down and we're going to come back tomorrow because I just have too many ballots to process. But then a neighboring county, which was also a large county, uploaded their first unofficial results and made almost every single race extremely close. And so the Secretary of State's office called every single county in Georgia and said, you cannot shut down. At this point in time, you have to go, and they made a direct order that they had to continue processing until midnight to try and get as many of those ballots in as possible. So what you're seeing initially in that Fulton County is this shutdown of the voting location, the shutdown of the central count. And so you see them putting everything away. You see them putting the boxes underneath the tables in a specific order. If you're actually looking, they're actually putting it in order. If you look at earlier in the day, you will actually see that same process the whole entire time. They bring those next ballots in a certain order, and they put them kind of underneath the table. Do I think putting things underneath the table is a good perception? No, I don't. I don't think they're going to do that again. But they do have that chain of custody as well. And I've even looked at the chain of custody that they had. So when that box actually comes in, they bink it in because it has a barcode on it, which you can't actually see in the video. But it has a barcode on it, so it gets binked into the room, accepted into the room. So they know which boxes are actually in that room to be counted. Just like we do here in Colorado, like in my process as well, like I know which box is coming in to be processed. So what you see initially in the first blip of the video that is shown is them shutting down for the night. So they're putting those boxes back into the order underneath the table. They're shutting down the counting scanners. They're shutting all that down. Then they get the call from the Secretary of State's office saying, you're not going home yet. You have to work until midnight and then shut down because we need more of the ballots being processed and counted. Because it wasn't just the presidential race that was close. There was a Senate race. There was local initiatives. There's a whole bunch of things that were very, very close. Since Fulton County is a large county, they wanted to make sure that they continue to process instead of shutting down early. 10 o'clock on election night, if you shut down, is considered honestly to be early. We shut down at midnight. We will work all the way through midnight, and that's typically what is done nationally. But they decided to shut down. So what you see next in that video is them reopening the process. So if you go back to the very first part of the day when they come in, you will see that what they did at that first initial upstart is what you're seeing again immediately after they shut it all down. You see the judges coming back in going, okay, never mind, I'm still working. And so they're rechecking everything back up. They're reopening everything back up to then continue processing. And so that is actually what that video is showing you. Unfortunately, bad actors have taken that video, done their own spin to it, and they've had to obviously have led into 3 different investigations into that video in the process that Fulton County and other counties in Georgia have done. So that's what I'm saying. We can release that video, and our video is eligible to be released underneath the Colorado Open Records Act. Everybody has a FOIA, so it's a Freedom of Information Act. Every state has a different, they have the federal, but they also have a different one. That video can be taken. We do and have to release it, knowing that somebody could potentially cut it and splice it and spin it, unfortunately. And that's ultimately kind of what happened in the Fulton County situation, is because they had the whole video, but they chose just to release that section and unfortunately do the spin on it. But I do know that directly and everything that has been a part of that, because I have been asked a lot about that video. Yeah. Yes.
A follow-up to that. So the Secretary of State there in Georgia had the influence to, call around and close it down, open it up, or at least stay open till midnight. Mm-hmm. And so maybe my question then relates to the influence the Secretary of State can have. And then that jumps us over to Mariposa County in Arizona, mm-hmm. and where the Secretary of State was in opposition to, Kari Lake, right? And so I was just curious, should she have recused herself, or could she, as Secretary of State, who's also in the race herself, could she have some influence in that election? Could you help me understand that also?
So I will say every Secretary of State's role in every state is different. So I do want to make that clear. So the Secretary of State in Georgia has more authority in the law to make counties continue processing even if that county wants to shut down. In Colorado and in Arizona, the Secretary of State doesn't have that authority or control. So Katie Hobbs, who was serving as the Secretary of State before she was elected to the governor of Arizona, she could not make that same call and demand or require that Maricopa County continue processing because there is that separation. They have an elected clerk and recorder, just like here in Colorado. I am the elected clerk and recorder. It is my responsibility to run the operation of the election. The Secretary of State, she can call me all day long and text me all day long or do whatever she wants, and I can just say, that's nice, have a good day. Thank you for your opinion. I will do what's best for my voters. That's the same in Arizona. So Katie Hobbs, in her capacity as Secretary of State, essentially what her responsibility as Secretary of State is to certify the candidates at the federal and state level to the ballot. She is then required to administer and make sure that the audit after the process is ready for the counties to do, just like here in Colorado. But does she or can she have the ability to do any type of influence over an elections office as far as their process and procedures? She can get laws changed, she can get rules changed, but that's the limit of the ability of it. The actual operation and counting and function of the election is held at that local level. So I would say that it is very similar to Colorado's. And unless you're easily influenced by a Secretary of State, then maybe. But if you're like me and you're not easily influenced by a Secretary of State, she can stay in Denver as far as I'm concerned.
Let's just say then, hypothetically, there is a Secretary of State who does wield that sort of influence over a particular clerk or recorder. Is it conceivable that that could somehow affect an election then? Just that relationship between those two people.
I would say at the end of the day, no. And the reason why I say no is because then if I had that type of relationship with the Secretary of State, I not only would have to convince myself, but I'd have to convince Rudy. I'd have to convince my deputy of elections. I'd have to influence all of my staff. And I'd have to influence every Democrat and Republican judge to get on board with that. There's a reason why we have bipartisan teams. There's a reason why it is public members coming in and doing the election. It is to prevent any type of incorrect malice or influence. I mean, I know I have integrity, but if I ever become compromised, I know that I have picked a chief deputy that would be like, yeah, no, don't think so. That's not going to happen. I know that my deputy of elections, he will also not do that. And if you've ever managed more than 3 people, you know how difficult it is just to even get 3 people on board with the same thing, if we're going to be honest. And to try and do what some of these people have attempted to create as far as narratives in the elections process, that would take hundreds of people getting on the same page of doing that. But then you'd also have to get the opposite of you on the same page of doing that. And I just don't see that that's going to be the reality, to be honest. Working in this, like I said, for 19 years, I just do not see that that is feasible, especially, like I said, if you've managed more than 3 people, getting everybody in the same direction is a little hard. So that was my answer to your question. I appreciate it, though.
Yeah, but in the case of Arizona, it sure seems like Katie Hobbs self-audited herself. You know, there's a conflict of interest there. So the buck stopped with her with the actual count of the election results. And
so every ballot that was cast that was eligibly counted was counted for the race. And the audit that they do is similar to our Rislamine audit again. So she could randomly select her own race, and I can't remember exactly if the Secretary of State's race was close enough to be selected for their audit. But again, you're going to have county clerks that are not going to follow her direction just because they're opposite parties as well. Yeah. So yeah, and just so you know, the clerk Stephen in Maricopa County is the opposite party of Katie Hobbs, so they are not of the same party. And I've had a lot of conversations with him, and so in Arizona, they actually they have the elected clerk and recorder there, but they also have a board of supervisors for every county as well. So they actually have a it's either depends on the county. It can be 3 or 5 member board of supervisors for elections plus an additional elected, and all of them are elected. And in Maricopa County, there's 5 of them, and 2 are Democrats, 2 are Republicans, and 1's an unaffiliated. So even within that board, you have a mixture. And so again, for Arizona, for the Secretary of State, they would not only have to influence the clerk and recorder, but they'd have to get everybody on that board of supervisors on board as well. So again, it would be very, very challenging to have that type of influence over that many people. Not really. It's the local election. Like, I'm the one that's actually in charge. The Secretary of State's not actually in charge, and it's the same with Arizona. The Secretary of State's not actually, like, she doesn't actually run the election. It's the local election officials that run the election. So there is some supervision, but at the end of the day, it's still the local election officials' process and not hers. Yeah. Yep, and that's fine. I'm more than happy to share my knowledge. Like I said, I've had a lot of conversations about it, and so I'm just trying to get the correct information out there, and that's all. Just make sure, because with dealing with misdis and malinformation, what I find is, you know, everybody in this room is fully capable of making your own decisions, and with people that are driving some of the misdis and malinformation, they're only giving you a small piece of the puzzle, and I'm just trying to give you more pieces of the puzzle for you to finish the picture out. That's all I'm doing.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? We'll take one more if there is any. All right. So yeah, we're going to wrap up this evening. Here at Ecclesia Forum, one of the things that we want to do is educate as well as encourage political participation. And with the election, of course, Election Day coming up on Tuesday, a big presidential election coming up next year, we want everybody to be informed. We want everybody to be engaged and be involved in whatever way that that you can be. And voting is a wonderful way that we can participate. And we're in this great country. We have that ability to vote. So I encourage you to vote. And with that encouragement, if there, you know, we had that. I had that little bit of a doubt, like, well, can we really trust that process? Can we really trust that our vote really matters? And so I reached out to both Carly and Rudy, and here they are, you know, just sharing their knowledge and information with you. And after this evening, I feel more confident because of spending time with you both. Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here as well. That wraps it up for this evening. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of the evening.